Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking an absolutely epic story of survival, staggering ambition, and ultimate betrayal. We are looking at the fractured remnants of the Western Roman Empire and the sheer audacity it took to try and put all those broken pieces back together. The scale of what we're about to cover is truly staggering. It's a story where the greatest victories on the battlefield are totally shadowed by the darkest political sabotage right at home.
So, how exactly did one man resurrect Rome? That's the central mystery we're going to solve today. The dream of a restored Roman Empire essentially rested entirely on the shoulders of one brilliant general and his elite retinue of cataphracts. Now, if you aren't familiar with them, cataphracts were terrifying, heavily armored shot cavalrymen who could effortlessly shatter enemy lines using both lances and bows. They were an absolute force of nature. We're going to trace this general's desperate, high-stakes campaign all the way from the scorching sands of North Africa right up to the ancient gates of Rome itself. But to really grasp the scale of this mission, we have to understand the absolute nightmare the world had become at this point. The 6th century Mediterranean was notoriously violent. You see, the Western Roman Empire, which had once been this sprawling, unstoppable juggernaut, didn't go out in a single massive bang. It slowly, agonizingly whimpered away and decayed. And what was left in its wake was a fractured, incredibly violent patchwork of independent Germanic kingdoms. The safety, the established trade routes, the vast infrastructure of the old Roman world, it was completely shattered.
Section 1. The Dream of Rome. Emperor Justinian's Vision.
Okay, so in the early 500s, the Eastern Roman Empire, or the Byzantine Empire as they called themselves, was basically the sole surviving heir to Roman culture. But they were trapped entirely on the defensive, completely hemmed in by the Sassanid Persians to the east and those newly formed Germanic kingdoms over in the west. And that is where Belisarius enters the picture. He proved his mettle on that dangerous Persian frontier with some genuinely stunning victories, particularly at the Battle of Dara. By brilliantly using this complex network of trenches to funnel and trap the formidable Persian cavalry, he proved his absolute mastery of offensive tactics. He was exactly the weapon Emperor Justinian needed to reclaim the lost West.
Section 2. The Key to Africa. The Vandalic War.
15,000. That's it. That is literally all he had. In the year 533, Emperor Justinian entrusted Belisarius with what pretty much everyone in the empire thought was a complete suicide mission, invading the fierce Vandal Kingdom down in North Africa. Belisarius landed on the African coast with a relatively tiny force of only 15,000 men. To take down a kingdom that had once been a terrifying seafaring power, he had to rely almost entirely on the unparalleled discipline of those elite cataphracts we talked about. I mean, talk about the ultimate underdog stepping directly into hostile territory. So how in the world did he pull it off? Well, it all came down to a tactical masterpiece at the Battle of Ad Decimum, named for the 10th mile marker right outside Carthage. Belisarius knew the Vandal king Gelamir had grown overly complacent. When the Vandal cavalry arrogantly charged in, Belisarius ordered his Roman units to initially give ground. He baited them, letting them stretch out and break their own formation. Then, boom, the trap sprang. His well-mounted, mobile guard executed a ferocious countercharge. They rolled right up the Vandal line and completely shattered it. In just a single, breathtaking campaign, Belisarius secured the key to Africa.
Section 3. Defending the Eternal City. The Gothic War. Fast forward to 536, and the map shifts over to the Italian peninsula. Belisarius successfully takes the city of Rome from the Ostrogoths, but almost immediately he finds himself trapped in a brutal, year-long siege against a Gothic host numbering in the tens of thousands. Now, this is where Belisarius' unique brilliance really shines through. He didn't just rely on brute force. He used analytical, psychological warfare and serious architectural engineering. He rapidly fortified the ancient Aurelian walls. And when the Goths brought up these massive, terrifying siege towers, Belisarius didn't even bother targeting the heavily armored towers themselves. He simply ordered his archers to shoot the oxen pulling them. He completely neutralized the threat before it even reached the ramparts, leaving the Goths to manually push these giant, useless wooden towers through the mud. Just pure tactical genius. Section 4. The Enemy Within. Justinian's Paranoia. Now, we know about this incredible period, largely thanks to a historian named Procopius. On the surface, Procopius wrote this official history that highly praised Belisarius' campaigns. But secretly, he penned a scandalous secret history that wouldn't actually be discovered until long after his death. And it's in those hidden pages that the massive complication of this whole era is fully revealed. There was deeply rooted political friction and intense mistrust brewing between Emperor Justinian and his star general. Belisarius wasn't just fighting a war against Goths and Vandals out in the field. He was fighting a two-front war. And that second front was right at home in the imperial court.
And the root cause of all this friction was imperial paranoia. This is that consuming, terrifying fear held by a ruler that a highly successful general's immense popularity with their own troops is inevitably going to lead to a revolt. Because of this terrifying prospect, Justinian actually actively sabotaged his own empire's campaign. He routinely starved Belisarius of much-needed reinforcements, and he intentionally withheld funds to pay the soldiers at critical, desperate moments. Because of this artificial bottleneck, swift, decisive conquests were agonizingly transformed into grinding, brutal wars of attrition.
But this isn't just an ancient Roman problem, it's a universal tension in leadership and empire building. It's the classic dynamic between the warlord and the world builder. Think about modern organizational dynamics or corporate ambition. The very success and aggressive expansion required to build an empire, or hey, even a company, is often the exact thing that threatens the person sitting at the top. If we look across history, rulers like the Mauryan Emperor Ashoka in India had to manage the exact same threatening ambitions of highly successful governors and generals. It's an incredibly delicate, dangerous dance of power and trust. Section 5. The Last Roman. Gluing the empire back together. Against completely impossible odds abroad, and despite constant, grinding political sabotage from his own emperor at home, Belisarius actually succeeded. He glued the crumbling domains of the old empire back together, directly setting the stage for 2 more centuries of Byzantine dominance in the Mediterranean. And that is exactly why he earned the powerful, legendary title, the Last of the Romans. He embodied the stoic discipline of the old republic in an era that was rapidly sliding into the Dark Ages. Yet he was no unfeeling machine. Much like Emperor Ashoka, Belisarius possessed a deep sensitivity, frequently showing immense remorse for the devastating human cost of his own victories.
So what does this all mean? It leaves us with a heavy question. Does the ambition of empire always exact a tragic human toll? Belisarius achieved the impossible, for sure, but the cost, paid in blood, brutal attrition, and the complete fracturing of trust, was absolutely immense. As you think about the warlords and world builders of history, consider that timeless tension between the grand dreams of a restored world and the incredibly steep price paid by the actual individuals tasked with achieving it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep learning.